And we're preparing to live stream. This is really exciting. And we're preparing to live stream. This is really exciting. Hello, everybody, and my name is Leanne Lamb, and I'm the Executive Director of Contemporary Asian Theater Scene, otherwise known as CATS. And we'd like to welcome you to the conversation with playwright and actress Jeanne Sakata. This is a very exciting program, and we're thrilled to have her because we've seen her on stage, on screen, on television, everywhere. And then we have a chance to talk to her and learn more about not only her journey, but also her plays, Hold These Truths, and why a little bit more about her success. I'd like to also thank my co-moderator for today, Reiko Iwanaga. And Reiko is on the board of Contemporary Asian Theater Scene and also quite a dancer. I think she's created the Obon dance and has tried quite a legacy with her family in history of that. Also, I'd like to tell you a little bit about CATS, because CATS is promoting this program, and we really are coming together to support our Asian American artists and their work. We're trying to share the Asian American experiences and hope bring more solidarity into new communities, so we have a lot more love and joy in our lives. I think we can all appreciate that. So with that, I'd like to bring in Reiko Iwanaga and Jeanne Sakata.
Hey! Thank you for having us.
Welcome, Jeanne.
This is fabulous, Jeanne. This is your work speaks for itself. And I think many people have seen Hold These Truths. It's such an important play about the life and times of Gordon Hirabayashi. Mm-hmm. But as we begin, can you start us off? And for those who haven't seen the play, can you actually sort of explain a little bit about what it's about?
Well, it's about Gordon Hirabayashi, as you said, who was during World War II in the 1940s, a college student at the University of Washington in Seattle. And after Pearl Harbor was bombed and government orders followed for all people of Japanese ancestry on the West Coast to be forcibly removed from their homes and eventually put into barbed wire prison camps across the United States, Gordon, as an American citizen, said, "This is wrong. The Constitution guarantees me and everyone constitutional rights, and we should not be imprisoned without due process." And so he bravely defied these orders and turned himself into the FBI with a statement as to why he was disobeying the orders. And then a legal team coalesced around Gordon. They were able to challenge these orders, and his case went all the way to the Supreme Court, where he was unanimously ruled against in a really devastating defeat. But decades later, evidence surfaced that showed that military necessity argument that was used at the Supreme Court was totally based on lies. And they were able, a team of attorneys, many Japanese American attorneys, were able to take Gordon's case back into the courts, along with Min Yasui's and Fred Korematsu, two fellow resistors of Gordon's, and get their criminal convictions vacated after decades. So Hold These Truths, I would say about 80% of the play is a flashback into when Gordon is a young college student. It even goes into a little bit of his childhood and teen years before he gets to the University of Washington. And it was just really a labor of love, because I fell in love with this story when I first heard of it and started to research it. I was just so fascinated, and I became obsessed with it, really. I couldn't think of anything else. And I tell people I almost didn't have a choice. It was like I had to write it. So, and thank you to, it means a lot to me that the play has come to the Bay Area, since I'm a Watsonville native, and since South Bay, the San Francisco area, Palo Alto, I know these areas well, being from Watsonville. And it's been very, very special to take the play there.
Well, I think I was going to ask about what inspired you, but you've answered that. But we're going to come back to that. When you said Watsonville, I have to say that a very good friend of mine and a very well-known activist, Mas Hashimoto, was your teacher. And
well, I actually didn't have Mas as a teacher, but I knew him.
But he did say that he nominated you for the Watsonville High School Hall of Fame.
Yes, he did.
Oh, yay! That's wonderful.
Another honor.
I know, that's so sweet. I'm so grateful.
Among many other honors that went to.
And Mas actually brought my Los Angeles Gordon Hirabayashi, named Ryan Yu. He brought Ryan up to do a staged reading of the play, and we did it, I believe, at the Salinas Community Center. I can't remember the name.
He said they put it on free of charge for everyone to.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, and that was a very special occasion.
So how did those early years get you to where you are today as far as deciding to become an actress?
Well, I grew up actually in Monterey County, where the Pajaro River is. You go over the bridge. And so we were on the other side. And my grandfather and uncles and my dad farmed iceberg lettuce. And they were Sakata ranches, in Watsonville. And so we lived up until I was in the 3rd grade, right by the Southern Pacific Railroad tracks. And just right in the middle of the iceberg lettuce fields, right by the J.J. Crosetti processing plant. And I'd have to walk down a dirt road through the lettuce fields to get to school, Pajaro school. And so I had very vivid memories of those years. And I think there's a link to wanting to write about Gordon because I really understood what it was like to grow up in a rural environment. When Gordon was talking about, he said, yeah, I think my parents, they grew iceberg lettuce too. They grew cauliflower and peas. And, he would just describe working in the farm and working in the fields. And I felt this in a very visceral way, the sights and smells and sounds. And, I felt like I could write from a place of authenticity about Gordon's childhood on the farm. Of course, there were many differences as well, but I knew what it was like to hoe lettuce and to be out in the sun and worry about or watch my parents worry about farm conditions and whether the crop was going to turn out and lettuce prices, and I knew all that.
East of Eden, right?
Yes. Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, so being
and too, Gordon was from it was actually a Quaker Christian family, but my grandfather and my dad were very active at Westview Presbyterian Church, and so I knew what it was like. When Gordon said, "Oh, I grew up with this hymn," or I grew up, I remember reading this passage in the Bible. I said, oh, I know that. I know what that's like. I know what it's like hearing the Lord's Prayer in Japanese, Right. So I felt like those details really helped me be in Gordon's story,
Right.
It's nice to know that the sights and smells and sounds of something. It gives you a kind of way to land in the story.
Okay.
Right. Absolutely. That is so interesting.
Wow.
And Watsonville and Santa Cruz County was a whole different place at the time. It was a beautiful place to grow up, I would imagine.
Yeah, but it was I also related to another aspect of growing up in a rural environment, and that was, Gordon was really restless, and he wanted to get to the city, and he went. Well, he was such an adventurer. He ended up being a sociologist and studying a native Indian tribe that was in Canada. I think it was called the Doukhobor tribe. But then he ended up, after the war, going to the Middle East to teach in Lebanon and Egypt. Mm-hmm. And he had such international interest that what he did and hold these truths is just one small fraction of his life. He had an amazing life. And similarly, I, had dreams of traveling the world. And at the time I thought I'd become a journalist, to travel the world and write about the world and report on things happening around the world. And so I was really eager to get out of the lettuce fields. And so every time we went to San Francisco, it was like, yay, we're going to San Francisco, we're going to Candlestick Park, or we're going to the Ice Follies, or
Right.
we're going to Coit Tower, the zoo, the aquarium.
And that led you to acting. somehow.
Actually, my first exposure to the performing arts was in San Francisco. It was the Ice Follies. I forget where it was, but that was a revelation to me. I said, you mean people can make a living skating around an ice rink pretending to be cartoon characters, and people clap for them and they dance and wear costumes? And it was kind of a revelation to me that I never forgot, And then years later, you remember the Circle Star Theater?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I remember
yes.
my mom got all dressed up one night to go see Mitzi Gaynor at the Circle Star, and that was such a huge thing, right? And we go to the Circle Star, and I saw this. I'm just babbling on here, so just stop me when
It's so interesting. It's great.
Yeah, I was, I had my teenage crushes, and one of them was this British duo named Chad and Jeremy. And do you remember Chad and Jeremy? Summer Song, and yeah. And so there was a concert that they gave at Circle Star Theater, and I went, and I was waiting for their autograph after the show. And so going to San Jose or to Oakland or to San Francisco always meant like these cultural experiences
True.
that were so exciting to me. I think kind of pre-shadowed my interest in the performing arts. Yeah.
Oh, that is
It
great.
does have to start somewhere.
That's right. Chad and Jeremy at the Circle.
I think
But I think actually the first, yes, but I think actually the first dream I had of being a performer was actually in Watsonville, because my mom took me to the Fox Theater. Was it the Fox, or was there a theater called the Central? Anyway, she took me to see The King and I.
Okay.
And seeing all those Asian kids singing and dancing, just totally did it. And then I was taking ballet lessons in Watsonville, and my ballet teacher, Miss Cooley, I remember her name was Miss Cooley, and she was from England, and she was going to play Anna in a production in Salinas, and she wanted to be one of the Siamese kids. And I begged my mom to let me do it, but it was too much. She would have to drive me to Salinas for rehearsals, and it was just too much time. But I said, I lost my chance.
So you
I was so mad at my mom for months.
That is so interesting.
What was your next chance that really did take you on your way?
Oh, well, gosh, then many, many, many years passed. And I think what did it was when I was in college, I was asked to take part in a skit it was a church group. And kind of that feeling came back, was, oh, I love this. I love pretending I'm someone else. And I took an acting class at UCLA just for fun. But I felt so at home, up there in front of everyone, doing a monologue or a scene. And I thought, wow, I can't forget this feeling. And then a friend of mine who sang at my wedding, Melinda Fong, she was a musical theater major, and she was in a production of Godspell at UCLA. And when I saw her up on the stage, I literally had this like out of body experience. I just felt like I have to do what Melinda's doing. I have to be up there. And I didn't know how to get it, but I felt like I actually left my body and went up on the stage with her. So then I started, taking, I took my first acting class at UCLA and puppetry, and, this is a very long answer to your question.
No, it's very exciting. It's always interesting to hear people's journey, because I think we all when when we were growing up, we didn't see Asians on screen.
No, we
saw them-
didn't,
We
right?
saw The King and I. We might have seen maybe someone in the ballet, but it was few and far between. So
Yeah,
setting your own course, setting your journey was very, very important.
yes. Oh, should I just get that phone so it's
Sure, go ahead.
Leanne can plug the move play at the same time.
Yeah. Yes, I wanted to let everyone know that if you want to see Hold Our Truth is actually playing at the San Francisco Playhouse. There's 3 more performances. I believe it's going to be Thursday, tonight, Friday, and Saturday. And then, so if you can actually see it, you can see it not only in theater, but it is on live stream. So go to FSF Playhouse and order your tickets so you can actually see it in whatever is comfortable. But but Jeannie also said that the Playhouse is spatially distanced, safe, and has a great filtration system, and everyone wears masks. So it's a very safe environment.
Mhm.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Good. But Jeannie, I think what's interesting is when we were talking before, you had said this Hold These Truths has taken a life of its own. You've
Mhm.
birthed it and you've seen it go through its infancy, through its 20s, its teens, and beyond. And it's almost like, I don't know what stage it's in, but yeah, tell us more about the journey that this play has been, because and you created this about 15 years ago, or how long ago?
I started interviewing Gordon. My first interview with him was in 1997. And I had one-person shows on my mind because in the 1980s and the 1990s, they were just starting to come into being. They were not nearly as, numerous as they are now. It was a new kind of art form. And I'd seen a couple of them, one by a Japanese actor who I really admired, who's a friend, Jude Narita. And she did a show where she played 5 different characters. And, I'd never seen anything like that before. One person on stage playing all these different characters. And then I saw another one-person show with this, a similar format. And I was really fascinated by this new form of storytelling. And then I encountered Gordon's story. And I thought this would be a great one-person show where Gordon is remembering his past and traveling through the 1940s in his memory and meeting all these different people across the country and during his journey, and it stayed in my mind. And I, as luck would have it, I got a job in Seattle as an actor. And I met a young woman up there who had just interviewed Gordon for a high school paper or college paper she was writing. And she had his contact information. And so she gave it to me. So I called him up and I said, introduced myself. And I said, I'm an actor in theater and I would love to see if I could develop a piece about your World War II Supreme Court challenge. And he was very welcoming. And he said, I love this story. He said, you're from California. You said, I said, yes. And he said, are you ever in the Bay Area? Because I have 2 brothers living there. And I said, oh, yes, as a matter of fact, I'm going to be there such and such a date. And it turned out, coordinate with his visit to the Bay Area. And he said, I'm going to need a ride from my brother Jim's place to my brother Ed's place, because my brother Jim is in Mill Valley and my brother Ed is in Glen Ellen. And he said, how about you give me a ride?
And you can tell my story.
And I can tell you stories on the way. And then when we get to Ed's place, I'm sure Ed's wife will feed you lunch. And then you can hear us 3 brothers talking to each other. And so he was so great. He understood exactly what I needed, and it was just great fun meeting him. I was really nervous, but he put me right at ease. And so we did an interview there. And then I was so fascinated by everything he told me that I asked if I could visit him in Canada and do more interviews with him. So I had all these interviews and I came back to LA and I started transcribing them. And then I just started plunging in, trying to write this. I actually took the material to playwrights I knew and said, would you write this play? And everyone said, well, you should try and write it. You're the one with the passion. And I said, but I've never written a play. And they said, well, why not try? And so I just plunged in, and I got a lot of help along the way. And, 10 years later, we had our premiere at East West Players here in Los Angeles in 2007.
That's amazing. And then to actually meet the person and form the play around him, his words and his demeanor, that's amazing.
Yeah. And I was very helped by letters that Gordon wrote. He was a student, in the 1940s at the University of Washington. These are letters from prison, letters when he was hitchhiking, and he wrote them all to his friend, Eleanor Ring. And Eleanor saved all these letters and years later donated them to the University of Washington. So when I went to the University of Washington while I was doing this play, I was looking through this collection of letters, and I was so enamored of these letters. They're just, and I think you can read some of them online if you go to the University of Washington special collections. You can see some of these letters online, and they're just so enthralling because they sound like a college student in his 20s in the 1940s. They have that youth, but they also are incredibly visionary because he's saying this is wrong, and I'm going to stand up for the America that I was raised to believe exists. It might not exist now, but if I stand for it, it might exist in the future. So I could not, I think, have written this play without those letters.
Wow.
So thank you, Eleanor Ring.
That's marvelous that she saved them and realized the historical importance, really.
Yeah.
And so now you're current director and actor. Would you like to talk about them a little? Or?
Yeah, so Jeffrey Lowe and Jomar Tagatak, these two guys are so wonderful, and they're really loved in the Bay Area. They both grew up in the Bay Area. They're favorite sons, I think. And Jeffrey started out directing at Theater Works. He was he's been casting director there. He was company manager there. So I first met Jeffrey when he was the company manager, which means he handles all the arrangements for actors who come out of town, and like the apartments and all the logistics, the cars or whatever. And so he was doing that, and he was casting, and he was just starting to direct on the main stage. And his first main stage productions was, I think, The Christmas Show. And then he went on to direct a really critically acclaimed production of Language Archives by Julia Cho. That was at Theater Works. So Jomar played one of the leads in that, Jomar Tagatak. And they met and they did a couple other projects together. And the funny thing was that Jeff had approached me about directing Hold These Truths at Capitol Stage in Sacramento. And so that was going to happen, and then COVID hit. And of course, so many theater productions, including that one, got canceled. And then unexpectedly, Bill English from San Francisco Playhouse called me a few months ago and said, I heard about Hold These Truths, and I would love to do it here at the Playhouse in San Francisco. And he said it would be the first play that we would be doing post-COVID. And so we would be doing it with the reduced capacity, in our theater. We'll just open up a small percentage of the seats, and we'll have all the safety precautions in place. It's an experiment, but we want to bring live theater back to San Francisco as soon as possible, and we think it's doable. And so I said, great, I'm on board. And, San Francisco, like I said, was always very special to me because it was the city in which I experienced so many memorable moments, and really moments that made such a great impression on me and made me want to be an artist. I also had a cousin who had a boutique up there. Her name was Jeanne Sakata, We called her Sandy.
Oh.
And she had this boutique called Obiko.
Yes,
Did you know Sandy?
love that place.
Oh yes, wasn't it a great place? And so
Wonderful place.
she was such an artist.
wow.
She was not a designer herself, but she brought in all
Yes.
these
Oh, it was a gem.
artists. Yeah, all through San Francisco. And a lot of them hadn't ever designed fashion. They were sculptors and painters, but she asked them to design like one of a kind ensembles for Obiko for her shop.
Yes,
And so she would, when Tim and I first got married, she'd have us up to San Francisco. We'd stay with her and she'd take us around San Francisco to meet all these artists. And, she helped us buy our first tansu. And
yes.
so San Francisco and all these memories. So I said yes to Bill right away. I said, yes,
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
yeah. I said, let's do it. I said, I understand it's a bit of a risk. We don't know how many people will come. We don't know how many people will. But then he said, delightedly, he said, and we'd like Jomar Tagatak to play Gordon because we worked with Jomar. He's been in several of our productions. We love him. We adore him. He's fantastic. And I said, oh my God, Jomar was going to do it in San Francisco. So yes. And then they had worked with Jeffrey a little. I think he had done some play readings with them that he directed. So Jeffrey came on board, and then we got a call from Sacramento, from Capitol Stage, saying, hey, I hear you guys are going up at Sacramento. Hey, so now we can bring you guys back to Sacramento. So after this run, Jomar and Jeff will be taking the show up to Capitol Stage after all.
Oh,
Oh
that's
my God, so it does have a life of its own, really.
Yes. Yeah,
Well,
you can
with
see.
theater works, they've always been really good at blind casting and Asians, and now I realize maybe Jeffrey had something to do with that. I don't know. But,
Well, I think that their colorblind casting started, years ago. I think Kelly always had Robert Kelly, the artistic director, and his partner Ev Shiro, who was the director of art director and marketing director. And I think from the very beginning, that's what they wanted. They wanted to cast in a way that was reflective of the Bay Area. And so for many years, a dear friend of mine, Francis Jew, who's now an actor in New York, he did many plays with Theater Works where he was cast as things in roles that we would normally not be cast in.
Right, the blind casting. Actually,
yes.
We as Cats had a private reception one time.
Yeah.
With one of his plays.
Was it M Butterfly?
Well, that's what it was.
I think.
Oh yes, that's fantastic. Yeah, Francis is just one of the. I think he's the one, another pride and joy of San Francisco, being a San Francisco native. So Theater Works has always been at the forefront of doing that kind of multiracial casting. So yeah, I've been so lucky to be involved with these two great Bay Area theaters.
Yeah, it's so interesting that with the times that we're living in right now, with the whole anti-Asian incidents happening, it seems like it was a really perfect time to bring it to San Francisco as well.
That's what Bill English and his partner Sarah, that's what they said, now's the time to bring this. I'm sorry, Susie Damiano. They said, now is the time to bring this play to San Francisco. San Francisco has been experiencing a lot of hate crimes and, assaults against Asians. Even Jomar, who plays Gordon, has talked about walking through the streets of San Francisco and just having a kind of wariness and a real alertness of who is around him and who's passing him that he didn't have to have before. And now he said he's very aware of who's in front of him, who's to the side, and he makes sure that anyone that passes him, that he makes eye contact. And so to tell him, I see you. And it's exhausting, I know that Jeffrey talked about his mom having to walk through a parking structure to get to her car, from her job and being worried about her. And so Bill and Susie said, this is the time to tell Gordon's story here in San Francisco. So I'm really grateful to them for that.
And with all your productions throughout the United States, have you found different reactions from audiences? I mean, as far as
Yes.
knowledge?
Yes, here on the West Coast, people tend to know a lot more, of course, about what happened, because when we take the play to these West Coast cities, it garners a lot of interest from people who either were in the camps or had relatives in the camps or parents in the camps, or people who are studying what happened in these camps. And, there isn't really an audience member in the West Coast cities that we played that doesn't have some connection to the camps, maybe even if it's not a personal one.
Right.
They want to know more, or they know some and want to know more. It's interesting, back east, there's a lot of reactions like, I had no idea.
No idea. Right.
In New York, I remember a friend of mine, Jewish American actress I worked with, she said, Jeannie, she said, I knew as a teenager something bad was happening, but I didn't know that they were taking babies out of orphanages who were, 1/4 Japanese or even less, babies in orphanages, and putting them behind more bars. I had no idea anything that horrifying was happening. So, and she said, I would say a lot of people in New York felt the same way, that they heard something bad was happening, but the government did a good job of, covering up just what they were doing and sanitizing it in a public way, making it sound like it was, for our protection kind of thing. So I've been really grateful for the chances to take the play to a lot of East Coast, venues. Like we took the play to North Carolina. We even took it to Tennessee as a staged reading, for an academic conference that was about Gordon's Supreme Court challenge.
Well,
So I'm really happy for the chances to take the play to those places where we would find audiences that don't know as much about what happened to Japanese Americans during World War II on the West Coast.
And even because when we lived in New York, and I'm much older, they even had trouble understanding that we were Japanese Americans.
Oh.
They first connected with Japanese companies coming over.
Oh, and
so you're right. So, there's a second barrier there too, sometimes with knowledge.
Mhm.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I can see where a staged reading is really effective.
Yes, we've in addition to having our professional productions, we've been able to do a lot of stage readings and different community events, like we did for Mas and Marcia, in Salinas.
Yes.
And we'll have an actor just with the music stand and the script. But we also have sound cues that we can bring sometimes on a computer, which adds so much. And sometimes the guys know the script well enough that they can, step away from the script. And it's almost like watching a performance, because the play is a solo play and the play is really about the actor. I mean, we've had amazing, amazing designers who have brought in incredible design work on lights and projections and sound, but at its essence, this is a story about one person. And so these staged readings can be really effective and low cost. So we've been able to bring them in, like we've done a number of JCL gatherings, conventions, or just social gatherings. We've done some colleges. We did a staged reading at the Clinton Center in Arkansas, Little Rock, Arkansas.
Great.
Yeah, for several high school groups around Little Rock. So this is a great way to experience. Oh, we also did one in Sacramento. We also did one in San Francisco. We've done quite a few of them. We did one at a Quaker school. And it's just a good way to share Gordon's story with groups that don't have the budget to bring in a professional production, which is quite costly,
I mean, this is the play that every American really should really see and hear about in one way or another. Just today, I saw there was an article in the that the Air Force is bringing a George Takei comic of his story and spreading it and sharing with
Oh.
everyone in the Air Force, which is, it's a first step. It's the education of what Asian Americans have gone through
Yes.
is so important. And we always want to make sure that it resonates with people, that it's a thread. It's something that they might become appreciative of our history and our culture, to understand what we are and why we are at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I think that, our director, Jeffrey Lowe, he did an interview with the Date Book, San Francisco Chronicle, and before the play opened, a reporter came to visit with Joe Moore and Jeff during rehearsal, and he was talking about how, the theater at San Francisco Playhouse is called the Empathy Gym, and I love that because their goal is to do theater and tell stories on stage that foster empathy. What is empathy but stepping into another person's shoes and being able to understand what they're feeling, as if it were happening to you. And it was one of my goals with this play. One reason why I wanted to tell it in a one-person solo show format is I wanted audience to really be able to step into Gordon's shoes, to walk in his shoes, and to know what that felt like, to think of yourself as an American, and to, Gordon is navigating the schizophrenia of being a Nisei student during that time. He, believes in America, he believes in the Constitution, but, there's no way in hell that he's, experiencing equality because he's a Japanese American, and, there's hostilities against Japanese Americans, and, there's places he can't go, restaurants and movie theaters, but he had that hope, and he said we just worked our way around it in order to survive. But then the bombing of Pearl Harbor just changed everything overnight. And I'm hoping that people know, when they see Hold These Truths, what it's like to have your world suddenly turned upside down, and to suddenly be viewed with hatred and suspicion by the rest of the country that you call your own country. It was one of my hopes that they would feel, people watching it, that they were Gordon, and to understand what Japanese Americans went through. And a number of people have told me they did feel that way, people who aren't Asian, not Japanese American. And so that's been really gratifying to me to hear that.
Oh, absolutely. When we saw it, it was a standing O. So, of course, I think everybody was involved in it.
Yeah.
And it does fit into the climate of what we were talking about earlier, too. And so was he able to see the completion, or where was
Gordon never saw the play on stage because it was sad. He got Alzheimer's disease while I was still working on it. And so he knew that I was writing it because I would call him every now and then to say, did I get this right? Or can you tell me a little more about this one? So he knew I was writing it, and he read some of the play.
Well, that's perfect.
Yes, what I sent to him. But he got Alzheimer's before I actually finished the play and shopped it around and got the first production.
Right.
But many members of his family have seen it. His children have seen the play several times, and they really loved it, which has been hugely rewarding for me, so gratifying. And relatives of Gordon have seen it. We've had a couple of productions where we had, Hirabayashi's, just flood the theater. And in Seattle, they were having a family reunion, and they were going on a boating trip or something. And so they were all gathering in Seattle. They all came to see the play.
Oh, perfect.
It was so great. And then again in Vancouver, because a lot of them, Gordon made his home in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and so a lot of his family's up there. So a whole bunch of Hirabayashis came to the play in Vancouver.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Well, earlier I mentioned the Watsonville Hall of Fame, but tell us more about the Jeanne Sakata collection in the Library of Congress.
Oh, that was so special and such a surprise. My dear friend Leah Chang, who is a actress slash journalist slash photographer slash blogger. You know, she's an amazing woman. And she had a friend who was working in Washington, D.C. at the Library of Congress. And her friend was starting a collection there of Asian American artists in the theater. And so that's how that came about. You know, I had just started working on productions of Hold These Truths. It had just premiered. I was gathering a lot of information. There were programs and there were interviews and things like this. And she said, you know, someday some young student is going to want to know about these beginnings of this play.
Absolutely.
And so I think you should be in touch with my friend. So I sent all these things to her friend at the Library of Congress, and that's how that got started. And, you know, along with me, there were other artists of Asian American descent that were contacted to start collections of theirs. So yeah, it's really great to know that your work has been valued that way. And that
Absolutely.
yeah.
Beautiful. What a testament. What a nice tribute.
And thank you for reminding me, because I just realized, wow, that was shortly after the first production. And I have so many more things to add to that now.
Absolutely, you're right.
I was going through my closet and I got out the Hold These Truths box of programs and posters and stuff. And
A lot of good reviews.
oh my God. I said, look at all the programs. We have been to so many cities. I was thinking of, you know, trying to find a collage artist and having them make like a wall.
Oh, that would be pretty. Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
postcards, programs. I mean, I have just a whole box full of.
I want to let you know, Jeanne, that there's a number of people have been weighing in and watching, and Charlene and Shirley, everyone has said that we've seen you.
Hey, everybody.
We're rooting for other actors and actresses in Asian. We have people who have said several of my cousins and I saw Joel de La Fuente star and Hold These Truths at Lucy Stern and Mountain View. And Joel was amazing. We enjoyed the show tremendously and learned so much. Thank you so much. So we have a lot of fans.
I'll put in a plug for Joel too. You know, he also starred on this critically acclaimed series on Amazon called Man in the High Castle.
Oh, he was in that. Oh,
yes, he was the Japanese chief of police, Inspector Kido. And when you watch that TV show, you cannot believe that that actor played Gordon Hirabayashi. You know, Joel, his range is just incredible.
yes.
And shout out to Joel.
Yay! I think I saw in one of your interviews. It was amazing. I think they were just so impressed on the magnitude, on the virtuosity of any actor who has played this character, because
and being a one-man show, I mean, he was slipping into other characters.
Joel was actually the first actor, I think, that did Hold These Truths that actually counted up all the characters.
Oh.
And he said, did you know that I'm playing 37 characters?
Really?
Wow.
In your show.
That's an achievement.
Oh, wow, I didn't realize it was that many.
That's amazing.
Sorry.
That's great.
But yeah, the actors that do this show, I tell you, I mean, amazing. When I think of the actors I've gotten to work with and see play Gordon and these 37 other characters, I'm just always so humbled, because, you know, I've watched them all do it, and it's so courageous of all of them to take this on, you know. And there have been about, I think, 7 or 8 Gordons now, more if you count the staged readings.
Right.
And I just love them all, and I'm so grateful to all of them.
That's beautiful. It's legacies that live on.
Yeah. And I like to think that Gordon himself would be so pleased by this, because, you know, we've had Korean American Gordon, Chinese American Gordon, Filipino American Gordon, Japanese American Gordon. We've had Hapa Gordons.
And actually, we commented on
Gordon, we've had gay Gordons, we've had and different ages, you know.
Wow.
There was a student group called ginseng that are in Rochester in New York State, I believe, headed up by a woman, wonderful woman, Randy Kaplan, and it's a student Asian American group. And this young actor who was actually a college student, did a stage reading for them. And he totally memorized the text. He had the script there because it was a staged reading, but he just glanced at it every now and then. I thought, wow, the amazing commitment of this young college student to memorize this whole thing. I've just been so incredibly lucky with the actors that have done it.
And I remember we commented on the Palo Alto one how well he could pronounce the Japanese names and words.
Yes,
considering that they're not all Japanese actors.
Yeah, most of the productions, if the actor, and I'm Japanese American, but if I were doing this play, I would need help with the pronunciation.
Right. I mean, it's a small thing, but it's a realistic thing.
Yeah, because I know the basics, but like, which syllable do you stress when this is the sentence? Like, I would totally need help with that, because there's some long sentence that I have in the play, like the Japanese translation of, I don't care if that girl is a Quaker, you get that girl a ring, and I would be able to phonetically sound out the Japanese for that, but I wouldn't be able to know all the time where the stresses are. Yeah, and the subtle. So usually, we have someone who is a Japanese coach that works with the actors to get the Japanese.
That's right.
And sometimes it takes, several tries. Because, if you don't grow up hearing the language,
yes,
it's like, I remember as an Asian actor, I've had to do lines in various, Asian languages. And yeah, it's hard when I had to do Khmer, which is a Cambodian dialect once for a TV show that I did. And it's so hard when you haven't grown up hearing it. I'd never heard this language before. And it just took me so long to wrap my head around the sounds of it.
So what are your future plans?
Well, I just finished another project. I had a commission to write an audio play, a radio play for a theater company here in Los Angeles, whose specialty is audio plays, LA Theater Works. Oh. And it's actually a Bay Area story, so I'll put in a plug for that. It's about the Coram Nobis battle that Fred Korematsu fought in the 1980s with a legal team that was led by Dale Minami, who's a civil rights pioneer, attorney in the Bay Area. I'm actually going to see him tomorrow, actually.
Perfect.
And Don Tamaki, who's Dale's partner in the legal firm that they have in San Francisco right now, and Lorraine K. Benai, who wrote Enduring Conviction, wonderful book about Fred's Coram Nobis battle. It also has Peter Irons as a character in it, a political science professor who taught for many years at UC San Diego and who discovered boxes of documents along with Aiko Herzig Yoshinaga.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yes. Peter and Aiko discovered evidence at the National Archives in Washington, D.C. that showed that the government was just flat out lying at the Supreme Court that there was military necessity to mass incarcerate all people of Japanese ancestry on the West Coast. They suppressed, altered, and destroyed evidence at Fred, Gordon, and Min Supreme Court trials. And so the play I wrote is called For Us All, and it mentions all three cases, but it centers on Fred's Coram Nobis battle, on how Peter and Aiko found this evidence of this, massive government cover-up and the lying at Fred's, Min, and Gordon Supreme Court cases, and how they took this evidence to Dale Minami and showed him this, talked to him about this evidence, and then how Dale and Lori Banai, who was working for Dale at the time, gathered together this legal team of Bay Area lawyers, many of them Sanse, and who worked pro bono for years to overturn these criminal convictions because their own parents had been in these camps. So it's the story of how the legal team came together and won Fred's case. And so you can go to LA Theater Works.
Well, I was just going to ask you about that. LA Theater Works.
Yes.
And hopefully if it's an auditory play. we
Yes,
can hear
it's a radio play.
Oh, wonderful.
And you can purchase it for downstream,
Perfect.
I'm sorry,
excellent.
downloading
Yeah.
To stream it. And there's also a program with the biographies of the whole cast. It's a big cast, a lot of wonderful LA actors that I know and love down here.
That's
And also there's biographies of the attorneys. I had to limit the play to 5 members of the legal team, which was Peter, Iko, Dale, Don, and Lori. So they're characters in the play. And I hope someday I'll be able to turn it into a stage play.
That does sound, well, that sounds like another play that can go on and on and on.
Right.
Education and interest and
Wow.
entertainment.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And I'm really grateful to LA Theater Works for giving me the
Nice.
commission to work on the play because it was something I probably wouldn't have done without their asking me to. And, you know, we got a grant from the California Civil Liberties Public Education Program to write the play and to record it. So it was just a wonderful experience because, you know, I got to bring together so many people who I respect and admire and love to make a piece that will hopefully educate more people about the Coram Nobis battles of the 1980s.
Absolutely.
Wow. I hate to tell you, but we're at our last few minutes of our program. This hour has flown by.
Yes, it has.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
And something that we always like to ask our quite a successful playwrights, actresses, and so on is like, what advice would you give to someone who was interested in getting into television, into theater, into playwriting?
As a writer or an actor or a little both?
All of the above. Thank you.
Well, first, I would say it's never too late. I became a playwright, you know, years after I was an actress. And I didn't know if I could do it, but I just took the next step in front of me. There's always that next step in front of me or in front of any artist. And one thing I've learned is patience and to just think in terms of the next step. You know, along the way, you never stop growing, you never stop learning. If the first step is to take an acting class, just take that first step. If you're further along and, you know, you're an actor wanting to write a play, you know, take that first step, and then that step leads to other steps. One thing I will also say is to just start putting your work out there, because Nia Vardalos, who, you know, of My Big Fat Greek Wedding, I listened to her give a wonderful talk once, and she said, you know, My Big Fat Greek Wedding started when I was in this class, I think a monologue writing class, this little theater in Los Angeles. And they met once a week, I think, and the assignment was to just share a monologue, write a monologue from maybe your family or something like that. And so she did a monologue of one of her crazy uncles or crazy aunties, and they really loved what she did. And they said, oh, bring us more. So she started to write more and more, and that eventually became My Big Fat Greek Wedding. And so that's what I tell artists who are, you know, starting, is just really be clear about what steps you have to take to get where you want to go. And then commit yourself to, by such and such a date, I will take that first step. I will call about that acting class. You know, I will make that phone call to ask so-and-so about, you know, what they would recommend. It's how I wrote Hold These Truths. Is, you know, I had a goal. Someone gave me a commission to write it. So I said, by such and such a date, I want to finish the first fourth of the play to this event. And I might not like what I wrote. I might think this is awful. Why did I ever think? But I will finish it no matter what shape it's in. And so you set goals for yourself like that. And I think that's really good discipline, because along the way, you know, more things come into your life that will inform you. Is this the path I should be on? Or is it maybe this over here? And so that's what I would say, just in terms of practical ways to start an acting career or start a writing career. But I will also say, really seek out good mentors who can help you set those goals. And there's so many wonderful teachers out there and mentors who can give you good advice. And you have to commit yourself to following through. You'd be amazed at how many people do not follow through on the steps that they lay out for themselves. And some of that has to do with fear. So lots of times I think we have to also maybe get therapy if we need it, to know why the fear is holding us back, what the fear is. I think that being an artist is such a commitment in terms of the soul and the spirit, as well as, you know, the practical things we need to do to get an artistic career that we want. So I would say, you know, be courageous and brave. And even if you're feeling fear, take that first step. You might find out that it's not for you, but if it's meant to be, you know, you will know what the next step is, or you will know to ask about it. Does that help?
Very much so.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
helpful.
And then there's a whole bunch of, you know, books I could recommend, you know, things like that. When we have more time, I could, yeah.
Well, we look forward to having you back, and we look forward to having you back with Jeff and Joe Mar.
Yes.
That would be fabulous.
Gotta get those guys here.
That would be great. So folks, please, if you're interested, please, how can you not be interested after hearing this, but go to San Francisco Playhouse and watch the play with us. And also, if I don't know if it's going to be online in Sacramento, or is it just going to be in theater?
I don't know that yet. I'm not sure. I'll find that out for you. But the stream will be available up until July 3rd. So if you want to see the stream of it, you know, purchase it now, your ticket. And it's a sliding scale, which is really lovely. I'm so happy this theater's doing that. So you can see it for as little as $15. And then, you know, if you can afford more, they have, I think, 4 tiers. So you can pay what you can.
Oh, excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being our hero.
Oh, yes, thank you so very
Oh
much.
my God, you guys are my heroes. Thank you for supporting Asian Americans in the theater. We need you.
Oh,
Support.
it's such a positive experience. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you so much,
Till
everybody.
next time. Bye,
All
everyone.
right. Bye. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.